Joining me now, Katie Pavlich, who's a Fox News contributor and news editor at townhall.com, and Mark Glaze, who's president of Campaign to Unload, a group urging Americans to stop investing in the gun industry. Great to see you both. Mark, let me start with you on this. Of course it's about ISIS. I mean, well, how can he say it's not about ISIS?
It's absolutely about ISIS. It's not either or. It's also about hatred, and it's also about guns. The fact is, since the year 2004, more than 2,000 people who were on terror watch lists were actually able to buy guns and explosives because the government doesn't have the power to block the purchase. There's legislation that, if it were passed, might have allowed us to catch this guy before he actually bought his gun.
Wait, now, before I get to Katie, let me ask, because you know that the gun defenders say that's because innocent people wind up on this so-called terror watch list all the time, like Steve Hayes, a Fox News contributor, got put in it, right. And he can't deprive them of their Second Amendment rights, which they're not told they're on there, with no due process. Go ahead, Mark.
Right, but there is due process after the fact. If you learn that you're inadvertently, accidentally on that list and you should not be, you go to a judge and you get off. But here's context. In order to fly to New York to do this, I practically have to take my clothes off and give my hand sanitizer away before I'm able to board a plane, and I've never had a conversation with the FBI. We know the FBI had 2 investigations open into this guy, and nevertheless, the government can't even put a pause on the sale. I don't think Americans want that, and Donald Trump has said he doesn't want that. I think this is a big opportunity for him.
Go ahead, Katie.
Well, I actually also think that this is a big opportunity for both sides of the political aisle, and I think that Democrats would be more productive, and rather than grandstand on the Senate floor in a Capitol building that is defended by men with AR-15s, for example, they could be cleaning up the terror watch list, and they could be cleaning up the terror no-fly list, because we do know that the terror watch list alone, which is separate than the fly list, has 1 million American names on it, many of which have nothing to do with terror. And Megan, this is not only about protecting Second Amendment rights, it's also about protecting due process before the fact. And when you get put on one of these lists, it literally takes an act of Congress in the majority of the cases to get you off.
That's not the case. Look, I understand that at some point the NRA may have handed you a piece of paper and that's what you're reading from. The fact is, if you are accidentally on that list, and there are not that many people who are, you go to a judge, you say, why am I on the list? They look into it. If you're not on it for a reason, they take you off. That does not happen often enough to allow people who we know are terror suspects to buy guns to protect your Second Amendment rights.
They're saying, there's this bill, Katie, that they're pushing now that says, why don't we have a bill, a law that says a cop, a sheriff, a police department can say, you know what? Omar Mateen shouldn't get a gun. He shouldn't get a license, even though nothing came of those 2 FBI inquiries. We still don't feel okay about it.
Well, look, Megan, just because you're put on a terror watch list, again, until they clean up the list, you can't deny people their due process rights, and you can't deny them their Second Amendment rights simply because they are on a list.
Katie,
and if we're thinking about, if I could just finish my point, in terms of cleaning up the list, there is a lot of opportunity here for both sides to actually get something done, but you can't put 1 million people on a list and expect the government to be able to go through and be efficient.
With any sort of a speed. I mean, as I recall, Steve Hayes came out and said it was a nightmare to get himself off of this. It was not lickety-split in and out. I'm Steve Hayes with the Weekly Standard. What's that? You know, it was hard. Go ahead. I'll give you the last word, Mark.
So, look, I think that this is actually an opportunity, as you say, for both sides to get their acts together. Should we clean up these lists and make them narrower? Of course we should, but we're never going to have a perfect list. And as long as I have to take my clothes off to get on a plane, when a guy's under terror investigation, if he's on a terror watch list, let's take a few days and stop the purchase.
You know what's so frustrating? Can I just tell you, here's what's so frustrating. So the Democrats are talking about the guns. What is the plan? What has President Obama said he's going to do about this? What is he doing?
There is actual legislation out
Megan,
there
if I could,
that
let me give that one to Katie. What is he doing? What's being done to change the way we screen these needles in the haystack, as Comey put it?
Not a lot. I mean, you look at the president's rhetoric and you look at his foreign policy over the last 7.5 years of his presidency.
And nothing's changing.
And the issue here is when you have Democrats saying this has nothing to do with ISIS, therein lies the problem. This absolutely has to do with ISIS. The killer pledged his allegiance to ISIS. And until we decide to take on ISIS where they breed, which is not in the United States but overseas, we will continue to see these problems.
You get the feeling that maybe the 2 candidates running for office are coming up with plans. You get the feeling that President Obama is like, it's really hard. Sorry. I got to go, you guys. Great debate. Thank you for being here.
Thanks
for having us.
You know, that's why Americans feel so frustrated. It's like, well, what are you going to do? What's the plan? At least Hillary Clinton's like, I'm going to have a committee. They're going to look into homegrown terror. And you know, Donald Trump's got all sorts of plans.